Welcome back to another Peterson Academy DiaLogos. Today we're going to have Scott give a proposal on something in the ballpark of scaling ideologies. Really interested in this because we've been, um, the past several DiaLogos sessions, we've been wrestling with political ideas and how to govern ourselves. With Gerald, we talked a lot about the importance of our personal responsibility and taking and civic engagement in your local jurisdiction. And then with Leah, we talked about narcissists in church leadership and the importance of a Jethro-like governance of 10 and small fellowships as a bulwark against the emergence of a narcissistic tyrannical leader, and the importance of small groups to kind of defend against that. And so I see this. I don't want to prejudge this session too much, but I see from what Scott has shared with me about his ideas, it seems like it's going to feed really well into that ongoing dialogue. So today, Scott will be offering his proposal. Josh will be the lead listener, and I will be the secondary listener. We're going to just explore these ideas, and we'll see where the journey takes us. All right, take it away, Scott.
All right, cool. I had to write this down because this came to me a long time ago and I haven't thought about it in a long time. So I kind of wanted to bring to other people and help me, remember it and work through it at the same time. But when it hit me like lightning. And maybe if I had just read a book, maybe y'all know and you'll be like, oh yeah, someone's already talked about this before. I think it would be hilarious if that happens. So uh, I think economic systems are ways humans try to survive different problems. Some problems are small, group problems. Some are national problems. Some are progress problems. So I'm thinking the three majorly talked about economic systems each point to a different survival need. It's like communism, socialism, and capitalism. Communism seems aimed at preserving the village, and socialism at preserving the nation, and capitalism at preserving progress. And in my conversations with people on these topics, people don't seem to be only defending an economic system. They appear to defend what they think keeps people safe and something worth keeping sacred. I think I just want to open it up like that. Yeah.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So you are finding the essence of what the goal is with each of the systems, saying that the communism is for preserving the village, socialism for preserving the nation, and capitalism for preserving progress. And it's interesting because village and nation are both about a people group, just different sizes of a people group. I wonder what is different about communism versus socialism, where one of them does preserves, you know, the village, and then also how does that play in? Because of course, all of them are simultaneously, at least from their doctrine about preserving everything. Because if you preserve the village and the nation dies, you don't have the village. If you preserve the nation and you don't have progress, your nation falls apart. So they seem quite interconnected. So I wonder how the essence of that stands out when it is a multifaceted function.
I think most places have a mixed economy where they kind of pick and choose the goods from each one of these things. And so I'm just really curious about like the patterns that these things are protecting and how it is that whenever we have these conversations, we're always not we, but like I see a lot of people, bring up the counter to this system as if we don't use everything at the same time always. Like it seems so obvious what I'm talking about. It feels like one person hears capitalism is like that's protecting freedom, and then another person hears it, it's like you're destroying the village with greed.
Hmm. Can
It
I
opened.
if you got something to say, Josh, I'll feed in something to this that you might find relevant. Um, Particularly, maybe we can extract the essence out of these things and what kind of joins them together. Uh, Moral Foundations Theory, by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if you read the book The Righteous Mind, but he talks about the different moral values that both the conservatives and the liberals have that are different, or the right and the left. And those have an evolutionary basis. I believe there is a on the left, they value things like harm and fairness, as well as caring, so redistribution, while the right values things like sanctity, hierarchy, and loyalty. And they also value uh, harm, but they don't value it. They don't value it the same way that the left does. And the right has much more nuance in their moral foundations. I lay it out because that ties into this where those where those foundations kind of originate from. Well, before the modern world, in pre-industrial society, we were mostly, especially in the Dark Ages, but even before the Dark Ages, for like the vast majority of human evolution, we were in tribal groups, hunter-gatherer groups. And there were two problems you had to navigate in a hunter-gatherer group, or even in an agrarian small farm village. And it was acquiring resources, amassing resources, and then properly ensuring that those resources get distributed amongst your village. So two major social problems you got to deal with, versus subduing the earth around you, and that includes making sure the rival tribes don't raid your village and steal your women. So there's that protection. And that's very much almost like a masculine type of duty right there. You're protecting your tribe and you're acquiring resources. And then there's the other side's almost like a feminine bent to it, because you want to make sure the least in your village gets tended to. The matriarch wants to make sure the children are getting fed and those resources are distributed properly. And there's a lot more there's that foundations. And the problem with these two foundations is, in the ancient world, primitive world, those I can go out and hunt and amass food, but then I go back to my tribe and I have to redistribute it. And so those two problems are resolved really close. Those two different personalities that come to bear on that problem are tightly knit and they work close together. In the post-industrial world, those two different facets of life, amassing resources and distributing, those that kind of schism out the bigger your society gets, and there's a gulf between it, and that creates a lot of conflict, because you got one group of people who value amassing things, but then you got the social justice types to say everything needs to be distributed, and their two ways of life are completely different through specialization. And so I wanted to bring that up. That might add to your observation here with this conflict people have about communism works in the village, yes, but we don't live in a village anymore. But I don't think people understand the scale of perception, or the scope of the scope they need to look at these problems with. So
Yeah, I'm curious why. Why do people treat these economic systems like one is the answer to all?
mm-hmm. uh, I think it may be this is I just finished the civics course with Dan Crenshaw, and he talks a lot about Tocqueville when he comes to America. I believe that's his name, and he's viewing them, and he's wondering what makes America great. And he says it's their local civic engagement. It's the education, the religion, and it's not like religion as like the broad church that overrules everyone, but it's more like there's a religion that brings local communities together, and then they have their civic engagement. And so there's these all little small nodes in this country that are working together, and they're able to resolve um, conflict of redistribution of wealth, you might say, at their local level, and they're not having to kind of funnel that up the chain of command to a higher form of government. They're able to resolve it at the lowest level possible. And that was Tocqueville's observation. And kind of the warning is if people lose that in their country, they lose that local participation where they're dealing with governance at the most local level. They're going to be susceptible to it could be a tyrannical ruler, but also can be like conspiracies about who's actually running the show, and people get all sorts of crazy ideas, and it fragments a country.
Yeah, so now I'm wondering if it was possible, what happens if you just pluck one of them out?
What do you mean by plucking one of them out? Like,
Just stopped anything that has to do with communism, or anything that has to do with socialism, or anything that has to do with capitalism in these mixed economy places that are, most likely what we're talking about.
May I ask then, at what scale would you pluck it out? Like, would you pluck it out absolutely, or just pluck it out at a certain level? Okay, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's explore that then. If you plucked out communism, redistribution, each according to their need, according to their ability. Is that
Well,
how it goes?
maybe not necessarily like the Marxist-Lenin version of communism.
Okay, yeah, let's define our terms.
So, like, I mean, it's got to be something like an HOA. It's got to be something that operates like a communism, right?
Okay. So like an HOA or something, you buy into it at your local HOA. There's no one kind of
Electricity, maybe. Utilities, maybe. They have this type of, communistic behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's turn all of that into socialism, or turn all of that into capitalism, or it could be split between the two. Let's pluck away the communism. Maybe then what are the consequences of that?
Expound to me real quickly then. How is the electric utilities communistic? Like, I'm really trying to pin what your definition or understanding of communism is, so we're univocal here.
Yeah, so it's like the parent sees that the child is starving. He doesn't ask the child, "Well, I need you to do 9,000 push-ups today so that you can earn your food."
Mm-hmm.
And so the electricity can be, well, we all collectively, uh, pitch in a way. Like, I live in a community where my garbage is kind of overly expensive, but
Mm-hmm.
it's because there's a monopoly. And so I'm trying to think of how to draw. This is what I'm talking about. I didn't think this out, and I need y'all's help.
Yeah.
Because whenever I came to this conclusion, I was like, why am I thinking this? Help me understand how you view communism, because I have this Icarian French version and I have the Marxist-Lenin version.
I'm mostly familiar with the Marxist-Lenin version. I'm not familiar with the French version. What is the French version from your understanding?
It's just everyone shares, like you said, the social justice warrior kind of vibe.
Okay. Everyone shares.
Like there's
And
50 people understand they need to all grow this and share this, and they just live happily ever after. It's kind of like the ideal.
yeah, the only problem I have with that is that I don't know if it can really, that type of ideal can actually extend beyond the family unit or even the extended family. Just because I think you need such a high degree of trust for that to work. I know that when it's
Yes.
history, New England, there was a lot of um, socialist or communes. Ralph Waldo Emerson was part of one in New England during the early American days, and they tried to start the little communes, and every single one just ended in people at each other's throats or sexual deviancy or all sorts of crazy stuff. Um, and I think it failed every single time because they they're I don't think it can extend beyond the kin network. I think if you try and try and have a fraternity type relationship with someone that's not your kin, or you don't have something binding you strong together, like you didn't sacrifice together towards something. I think you can live communist principles with people who aren't your family if you fought in a war together and you were on the battlefield and you got that sort of a blood bond with your brother in arms. People talk about this when they're in war. They have that and they have that high trust. But if you don't have that high trust with someone else, and maybe you can do it if it's religious, but these secular communist people, they could not figure it out, and it was a disaster every single time.
So
Yeah.
So before we started recording, I was kind of going over my career. I worked for a co-op, and that has communistic footprints in it, where like everyone collectively owns and manages the business. And if everyone just stopped participating, then it just kind of crumbles. Even though in America, you still have to make profit, but you just redistribute the wealth. That's how the company would work. It was for a university, so it would make the profit and then it would redistribute it back to the promise that it had because it was a nonprofit. But it had the footprints of communism in that ideal state and not the Marxist-Lenin state, which I
don't know
need to be back up.
if this was already mentioned because my internet just cut off for a bit, but there's potentially a computational problem when it comes to communism compared to capitalism. Was this mentioned at all? I don't think so.
No, we didn't talk about the computation problem, so go for it.
So the computation problem is basically that capitalism, the idea is that you outsource all the computations being like all the little micro adjustments you're making for individuals and how it's balancing it out. And so the idea is that with communism, because you have a few people that are kind of like, you have to have some amount of people that are maybe employed to make decisions about how does the wealth be distributed, because it can't be that everybody is deciding, because that just doesn't quite work, because there has to be a leadership system where some people decide or process the money distribution. And so the computation problem basically says that there's maybe a certain amount of computations that need to happen. And then the problem with communism that arises is that you have to have a limited amount of people that are doing the work, and the amount of computations that they have to do is just too much, and which basically leads to kind of inevitable problems, because, well, even the slightest bit of nefarious intention or just like laziness, like somebody just doesn't want to do the work, and then somebody gets forgotten about, and then their paycheck gets forgotten about. And so that's why you would potentially see it working on smaller scales or with people who are closely knit, because maybe the people have a more strong connection to the motivation that's leading them to run the computation for the people around them, because, well, those people can literally walk up to them and be like, hey, what's going on here? Versus if it's a bigger system and it starts to scale, you may have a huge amount of computations that need to be run, and you just can't manage that. And that's what you get with capitalism, is that it's all on the individual level. So the computations are all distributed.
Yeah, I think, would it be safe to say, Josh, that the capitalism knows how to properly incentivize or use the proper incentive structure to get the individual nodes in a network to actually bear on the problem at hand? It's a form of distributed cognition, in a way, capitalism.
It does that. I mean, the motivational structure is part of it, but there's also the quantity of computations related to the amount of people who are doing them. So there's the motivational thing, which is what people generally talk about, which is kind of like, well, you don't have the motivation, you don't have the incentive. But then there's the other thing, which is just the number of computations. How do you manage these computations? And so that's like a more mathematical way of looking at it.
So I repeat that. So with capitalism, the computation there's too much to solve, too many problems to solve, that a central committee just doesn't have the bandwidth to solve it.
Right.
Correct?
I mean,
Yeah.
every individual person like has their life. You know, they have different expenses, health care, and their family, and different things are going on. And so you have to go in there and you have to be like, okay, well, this person's individual life, you know, and they have a certain interests in what they're doing, and they have all these multifaceted things affecting how much money they should have, and how much they're worth, and how much they're providing. Huge amount of systems, and basically that has to be manually worked out. How much money should this person get? Versus if you have capitalism, the person does it themselves.
Yeah.
They,
So it distributes sovereignty, distributes autonomy, distributes that decision making capacity down to a lower denominator, which would be the individual. Because I think the alternative, if you have someone who's having to solve all the problems, that person has to have either like a godlike intellect to know what every single individual needs, or he's going to make a systemic or a systematic system that everyone has to conform to. So he becomes a tyrant, and everyone has to conform to that person's policy that he lays out, independent of whether it's actually going to actually fit your best interest. And so you almost need a tyrant dictator in a communist society. I think communist works on the, like, I'm pretty sure in your household, Scott, you and your wife are the dictator of your child, at least. I mean, imagine if you're doing it right, your child is the dictator of your house. I mean, maybe the first year they are, but
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. I'm on her schedule, but it can work because you can be a dictator, a communist dictator in your own home, because you're able to do it lovingly because you actually know every single need of your child.
Why
But no
do you have
one can
to
have that power.
why do you have to add the word dictator to it? Why can't
Dictator.
why can't you just be communal?
Well, a dictator, I would say, a dictator is they are speaking order into their word. They're literally dictating laws. We have a lot of bad connotation, but before, I think the 1700s, dictator wasn't necessarily a bad term. And I think you are, at least you and your wife, maybe not just you as the man, but you and your wife are dictating the direction of your household for your kids. And as your kids get older, obviously you're going to give them more autonomy. As they get older, as they mature, they'll have more liberty and freedom. But while they're two, they literally they can't, they don't have any freedom when they're 2 years old, because they don't know what to do with it if they had it. They're literally dependent on you.
I mean, I don't know what else to say, man. Like, you're gonna find out. You're gonna find out exactly what autonomy is in a human.
Mm-hmm.
Because as the child starts emerging and like gaining that especially that physical autonomy, and they start throwing tantrums, that's just something completely different for
Yeah.
dictatorship. Because you need there's no, I would fully disagree with a dictatorship, even in the good context, whenever there's a child emerging. So I guess
Well,
I'm not trying to be pedantic towards the word, but
well, let's go to Josh then, because with your child, you have the computational bandwidth to actually solve the problem of your screaming tantrum 3-year-old, right? You're the one that has to bear on that problem. If you were to scale that up, a central planner does not have the computational power to deal with every screaming toddler in his kingdom, or in his
right,
communist
right.
empire.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think y'all are largely agreeing with like how I opened it was, this is for this scale, this is for this scale, and this is for this scale. Yeah.
So if you remove communism completely, at least the principle of how it would
The
work in a
logic.
family, the logic, you wouldn't have any family units. It would be no one would grow, because the child would come out of the womb and say, you got to start paying rent.
Yeah, why not, man?
Yeah.
wait, essentially, that's when you were saying that communism was for the small village and then the socialism was for the country. You were saying that that's how it should be implemented. I thought you were saying that was that was what it was aiming at helping. You're saying
Yeah, I'm not trying to say any oughts. I hope I'm not trying to say any oughts. I'm just saying that these are the the systems, the patterns that the systems are answering to, rather than like, well, communism stops greed. That's what I mean.
So, how far can you scale communism? Where does the line stop? Like, how far can you scale it out of the family
Good
until it
question.
starts getting tyrannical?
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I knew, man.
Well,
There's got to
you
be.
brought up your work. You brought up your work experience, right?
Yeah, it still lives in a capitalistic market, though. I wish.
Yeah.
I wish you could. I mean, maybe one day America will have a state. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to speak it into existence, but maybe one day America will have a state where they just do it. They just go full socialistic or full communistic, and we can run the experiment.
I mean, I would think that that wouldn't be a good idea, and the reason why is because I would say that America is the most functional system on Earth. But that would be my first premise, and then the second premise would be you don't want to experiment with the best system. You'd want to maybe experiment with a different system, and then they do have communist systems right now running, and they don't seem to be quite as good as America's system right now. But like, is that for a different reason? Like, would you say that the reason maybe America is so effective is because maybe the people, the spirit, the location, or something different?
I think because it has a system that corrects itself.
Mm.
And it also mixes the logic from most of the major useful economic systems. Not saying one thing is communist. It's like really hard to argue and prove that this is the communistic system you have. It's just the logic of it's just communal logic
Do we know
or
how
socialistic logic.
do we know how people feel in communistic countries? Like, isn't China maybe a bit communistic? Or like some
They're
countries?
they're
I think
they're
so.
slowly
Yeah.
integrating free market principles, but they're still under strict control of the CCP.
Yeah.
North Korea, I think, is full blown. North Korea is full blown communist, but
Yeah, they're not right. But China, maybe you could argue is doing okay. I don't know.
Maybe.
Like
Yeah.
they're pretty dominant in the market.
Yeah, for the America thing, I think it's just because we do anything and everything. We just take the best of the idea and then we just implement it and fight over it and bicker over it, and then we like whittle it down until it's just the best thing it can be, and then we put it into law. Hopefully that's how it works. Maybe not all the time, but that seems to be the general thing that America
well,
does.
I would say the best thing for what purpose? Because I know you talk capitalism is for progress, and when you were kind of laying out the economic systems, I came to my mind. I'm like, well, capitalism is the most adaptable because it has that function that Josh was talking about of being able to respond quickly to the needs of its economy. Unlike a communist regime, they can't respond as quickly, and so that's why they're not really for progress. They may be better for security, but uh, but the world's always changing, and so you do want a system that is adaptable. So the
Yeah,
security would be very short lived.
everything has trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
So swinging one way in one direction is going to have trade-offs. You're going to have, really good here, and then you're going to have really bad here. So that's why I like America's system, because it tries to balance the trade-offs.
Yeah.
One of the issues with capitalism is actually that it becomes like an oligarchy, or it becomes ruled by the few. Because if you have a free market system, like you think about the world, if there was no systems, would be entirely free. And then, I mean, that's what happened is the world existed, there was humans, and then the humans got power and they implemented the power. And so one of the things about the capitalistic system is that it turns into a few people having all the power because those people accumulate power. If you have more power, you get to keep more power, you get to control more. It's like it's a thing where the more you have, the more you get to have. And so lots of the checks and balances in the capitalistic system are actually to keep it capitalistic and not turn into something where just a couple people have all the power.
I think that's a result from the logic of the other systems, because an absolute capitalistic approach would, like you said, like
Right.
float into one direction.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not. I'll keep going.
yeah, I'll just say quickly, like, it seems like the ultimate goal of what you want is you want it to be where you connect the person's value that they're adding to what they get. If the person adds value, you want them to get value. And I mean, no system does that. And so, but that seems to be the goal. And capitalism maybe does the closest because the computation is the most granular. But yeah, anyway, I'll let you go, Khaden.
Well, capitalism also, it doesn't just reward automatic input for output, it rewards taking unknown risks. If you are wise enough to take the proper risk, you'll be substantially rewarded. But most people don't want to take that risk. Starting a business, very risky enterprise. Getting on the edge of innovation, you don't know if it's going to take off or not. And most businesses fail 9 out of 10. So that's what capitalism, that's the incentive, is it's such a high reward, but it's also a high risk. And communism kind of, often by spreading the goods around to everyone, it kind of snuffs out or flattens out the incentive structures to take those high risks. Often those high risks out of necessity. And one more thing, I want to put this on the table too, to this idea of oligarchy taking over capitalism. I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% on board with that. Capitalism inevitably becomes an oligarchy. Partially because I think capitalism, when it is mixed, becomes an oligarchy when you have government-sanctioned monopolies or subsidies that allow particular business to kind of hold the reins through their lobbyists to have tariffs that go in their favor. I actually think, and this is kind of looking back on history, and I've taken the capitalist course at Peterson Academy, so I'm kind of informed, maybe even a little biased on that perspective. But what a true capitalist system provides is it allows goods go to the most efficient producer. But what that incentivizes is people who want to compete with the person who has a monopoly out of their competency. It incentivized them to perhaps invent the light bulb. Oil was mostly used for lighting until Edison invented the light bulb, and that made one usage of oil completely obsolete. And so, out of necessity, capitalism incentivizes innovation to find new ways of creating good, or making good, or solving the problems. It incentivizes, out of necessity, novel ways to solve the problems that your society is confronted with, by tapping into the brain power.
It absolutely does that. I just want to say this quickly because I feel like it's just so important. So it absolutely does that. So capitalism does really well when there's big innovation flooding it. There's big changes, there's pressures, and then it results in people solving the problems. Amazing. The one thing that also happens, though, is that established industries get monopolized by a select few as they buy up and control, and they get all the assets, so it becomes impossible to challenge them. In some industries, you can't do it small, you have to do it big. In order to compete with the big guys, you have to have huge machinery. If they buy up and undercut and do practices and kill their competition, what you end up with is a few in power. And then, so in the case of light bulb, in the case of like any sort of innovative thing that's happening, the AI bubble, the computer internet, these things they're great for capitalism. The problems arise in very established markets: housing, food. These things can start to be very controlled, where they're eternal assets, but there's no innovation that's going to change the landscape. And then a few people get huge amounts of power, and no amount of innovation in other areas is going to disrupt innovation in those areas.
That's a good point. That's something I'm struggling with the capitalist argument. I'm trying to figure out where there's a benefit for a mixed economy. It's kind of an argument against the libertarian, the pure libertarians. Dan Crenshaw brings this up about government backing agriculture or insurances and having some regulation on the agriculture sector, because the libertarian would want to, they want to keep things low so that we can compete with other nations. But Dan Crenshaw brings up the point, like, well, you can think of food as an actual national security threat, right? Because if our food supply goes out because of a famine or an earthquake, then we're at the mercy of other countries to give us food. And that's no bueno. And so he actually views, like you said, those principles of like housing and food, those goods. Can those be innovated upon? And what is the line that's drawn? And when is that innovation? When are you going to sacrifice security for innovation, where you put us at risk of potential bad actors, bad foreign powers creeping into our country? And so that's an argument I'm struggling to work through. Like, where's the line for capitalism? Because we want progress, like Scott was going at, but then if the principles of communism or socialism are not so much about amassing wealth, it's not based on that care foundation, but it's about distributing and maybe a little bit of protecting what's already there. I don't know.
Yeah, so now I'm curious how you guys feel about welfare and Social Security.
Oh, how do we feel?
Not your opinion, but in the context of this conversation, because that would be like the socialism scale of this. So you have this capitalistic behavior where you're gaining and gaining and gaining and snuffing out and gaining and surpassing people that are lesser than you, and maybe maybe they take the loss and then they come back and do better than you, and now you're the loser, and then now you're left out.
Mm-hmm.
What is there to protect you now that you're left out? Maybe you're really old and you just worked really hard your entire life, and now you can't participate in society anymore.
Well, so these are systems that have been around for a while. They've been tested many, many different times in different countries throughout the ages. But the one perspective is, well, why don't we just look at the history books and see which worked and which didn't? But I would say that there's a massive, massive change that just happened recently to humanity that completely changes how these systems would work in practice, and that changes the internet, because what you have now is the ability for people to connect and monitor and administrate systems just infinitely dimensionally. Like anybody can be touching any part of the system. And so when you're talking about welfare states of like distributing things like this, well, the classical thing is to talk about the problems of giving money to people who don't deserve it, and then how it puts burden on the people who are actually working, and does it motivate people to work, and all these different things. I mean, I wonder what you will think about the possibility of, well, maybe reconsidering these systems, but considering them from a light of way increased transparency, where there's parts of them that the parts that used to not work, for example, in communism, people get in power and they sort of take control. They used to not work. Then adding some level of accountability through transparency. I know Khaden and I talked about this a bit. And completely, Big Brother spy thing maybe isn't ideal, but like, what about some implication or some level of bringing in the internet into the conversation to make it different?
I think I would turn that towards like some of the things I hear you say, like towards motivation. Like, what would motivate someone to help another person that doesn't impact them? Why don't you give charity to the people in Africa if you don't do that already?
I mean, you're talking about implementing like a welfare system where it's the system is set up to distribute money, take money from these people and give it to these people. So we're still talking
Cool.
about politics. Now, like I like to talk about the level of this person helping this person directly on a personal level, but when you're talking about politics, the implementation of the internet wouldn't be to incentivize people to give money. It would be that the systems are already in place, but it just gives people more power to monitor. So you take any one of the systems like socialism or communism or sort of welfare, stuff like that, and then you just add the element of increased transparency to it so that the corruption and stuff like that gets reduced.
That's why we have this social security system, though, is because you can't force people to do that. And yeah, I would be interested how we could use technology to somehow not force people to do that, but also motivate them to participate.
For people to do what?
Motivate to participate. Can
Yeah,
I?
we're talking about whether or not we, give our tax money to welfare and social security, right? Or are we talking about something completely different? I missed it.
Well, I'm talking about forcing people to give their money to welfare. So it's not
Yeah.
like they have to have motivation to do it. That's why I'm confused.
Okay. Yeah. No, then I'm just done. What are you gonna say, Kate?
No. Oh well, okay. Forcing. You're using the word forcing people, and then you're using the language of motivation. And I don't know, if you force too many people against their own will to do something, you're gonna have a revolt on your hand. Like, it's gonna happen. America, man, we went to war over. I mean, that was just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other things, but attacks on tea, man. Like,
Well, you
yeah,
have to have a little bit. You have to sacrifice some freedom so that you can. That's the thing
Yeah.
that I'm also claiming is socialism is the thing that preserves the nation.
I want to talk about. So you want to be able to. You need to sacrifice. There is some sacrifice. You just can't hoard all the resources to yourself, and so you got to have a sort of motivational system set up so that you're actually okay with some of your resources going to another person, being redistributed. And I think kind of what Josh is getting at here with the transparency of the internet is that maybe we can actually more better see where, I mean, we can see where our resources are being allocated. I think with the transparency of the internet and what's been happening in America, we're seeing how a lot of money is not going where it should be, and that's enraging some people.
Oh,
But that could be.
how is it? I'm confused. How do y'all know it's not transparent?
How do we know it's not all? Josh was speaking in a hypothetical. I think if with the internet, can it be made more transparent?
Well, that would be the assumption that it's not as
That it's
transparent
not
as it could be.
transparent. I don't think it's that's a good thing because I think it could be transparent, but I think people just don't care to look into it. That's kind of what Professor Hicks talks about.
That was the motivation I was mainly talking about.
Well,
I
yeah.
guess.
Now,
No one cares to track all the dollars, because it's like 2 cents a year for me to get taxed on something, so some corrupt bureaucrat can have a vacation.
Well, hold on.
Somewhere else.
I think that's too far, though. I don't think it's that people don't care. I think it's that some, maybe even most, you just don't have the time to pay attention to that, and that's why you have a representative system.
Yeah,
that's why you have a democratic republic, is because you elect people to do that for you.
You elect someone that does care enough to do the hard job.
You know, there's an entire industry of people right now who are doing incredibly useless things, and they could be doing useful things, and they do sometimes useful things. These are the entertaining people, the entertainers. Entertainers oftentimes focus on irrelevant drama, but sometimes, and I think this is maybe happening more, you focus on real things. And so this ties into what you're saying about motivation. Sometimes what happens is somebody maybe goes through a hard time, maybe something ridiculous happens to them, something like this, and they'll start a GoFundMe. Other people, the influencers, will share it, and they'll be like, look at this poor person, this happened to them, go support them or something, and people will go and spend their money. And so what we do have right now is we do actually have some amount of people paying attention to people who need money, talking about it, and then people giving them money. So we do have that to some degree.
Yeah.
Okay, I see kind of where you're getting at with this power of the internet to redistribute or give charity where it is needed. So there's a way that the internet can make ease, the transparency of the internet can can communicate with ease where your charity money needs to go.
Right. Well,
Okay.
do you think with this specific thing, do you think that these people are going, like whoever needs this charity, these people are going to collapse a nation if we don't provide this charity? Because we have these social welfare systems to cover an enormous amount of people.
Okay. I want to talk about the social welfare program with the elderly. Hear out my perspective on this. That's okay. I mean, this response may kind of feed into what you're getting at here with your questions. From my understanding, social welfare is built on tax dollars, and you need a good tax base to tax in order for it to work. Some of the fanatics think that Social Security is going to collapse in 40 years, 50 years, because the birth rate's too low. I mean, they're not thinking about technology perhaps progressing things better, but still, when you have a birth rate that's diminishing, that's still going to be a problem. So where are you going to extract money, taxes, goods, services? And so my kind of I have a joke with my friends. Yeah, we're not gonna have Social Security. Your best insurance for your old age is have 10 kids and pray that 3 of them want to take care of you and wipe your butt when you're 70. That might be your Social Security. Like that is what's gonna socially secure you. I bring that up though because this is a funny story. As we look into the future, is back to the family unit, and I was arguing with a friend of mine who is a social worker, and we talked about taking care of your grandma and whatnot. And I was a CNA for several years back in my I was younger. I worked in nursing homes, and those patients that are on Social Security, um, on Medicaid, because they have no family to care for them. It is utter hell for them. Like it is, the nursing homes are prisons, man. And it kind of sad because I'm like, well, yeah, you want Social Security, uh, but it's almost a sign of our culture. Because I know, like in other cultures, it's the children that take care of their grandparents, and even if it's a huge sacrifice for that family to take care of their grandma, they will do that, and that's kind of an expectation. The problem with Social Security, what it might be incentivizing as it's relegating elderly care to the state as opposed to the local level. Within the family unit, where sons take care of their parents, or daughters take care of their parents. And I kind of think about that too with when it comes to charity and caring for the poor among you. Uh, Maybe this is why America needs to have a strong church, like church groups, because that might be the role of the church. Is it actually keeps resentment and envy down by being that arm that actually voluntarily redistributes wealth among their communities to minister to the poor. And so when you have a Social Security and you have these welfare programs, it grows that arm of the government to take over that opportunity that other organizations could or ought to, but they don't, perhaps. So
I like the idea of having this technological advancement that Josh is talking about, and I also like the idea of people collectively agreeing to work towards helping people out. I just wonder why we're not already doing that.
yeah, I think why we don't do that like voluntarily, maybe it's we don't care. Like, and I mean, like, logistically we don't care, but I mean, like, morally, like, if it's your grandma who's hurting, if it's your brother or your sibling, you're gonna be more willing to give them money because you have that. Like I said earlier, with the whole kin connection, they're your kin. You want to help them. There's something compelling you to, out of love, you could call it, or maybe out of shared genes. You want to do that. You don't quite have that for someone in Africa who you don't even know.
Yeah, the proximity. Yeah, you're like
It's the
moral.
proximity problem.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. That's why I think to best implement, like to help people in Africa, isn't to throw money at them. It's to help educate them, give them help them establish their own little system in Africa that can get them on their own feet, so then they can start caring for the poor in their local community.
There's too many.
Yeah.
You just opened the door for too many jokes when you said that. Dang it!
Too many what?
You opened the door for too many jokes when you said that, man.
Oh,
It's called colonizing, sir.
yeah, it's called colonization. Yeah.
To the thing you said before, though, like, why do we not do this already? I would say it's because there's actually a strong meme that exists that giving money does not help. And I don't think this is necessarily true. I mean, it's true sometimes, but I think that actually rich people, really rich, really good people, billionaire Christians, don't want to give money to people because they think it hurts them. I think that's what people actually think. And I think that that idea is something that would really benefit from taking some work on to focus on, see, is that actually true? Everybody thinks this. Everybody I talk to, I go like, well, maybe this isn't true. They go, no, you can't give money to people. It doesn't help them because, there's examples of lotteries. People win lotteries and they lose everything. Money doesn't help. Your mindset is what it is. I think, though, that if we focused on that and we updated the system, the idea, the mentality of it, where it's giving money and making sure people are at a certain psychological place, then we could open the door to that. Because, I mean, it is bizarre, I think, how few rich people help anybody. And it's really because everybody, I mean, it's an easy thing to believe, right? Because somebody says, like, it's the common perception that giving money doesn't help. And then you're sitting there with the idea that, should I give my money and power away? It's like, well, it doesn't help. Well, okay, simple. I'm not going to dive into it deeper. I'm just not going to give my money away because everybody thinks it doesn't help. And so I think that if we could analyze these social states that people are in when they receive money and do some work on that, then we could start opening up possibilities for people to give money.
Would it be a safe way to frame, maybe you don't give money to help other people, but you give money to invest in them? Like, you're investing in them because you expect, or are hoping at least, that they're going to give a return on that investment. Maybe not to you, but just to society in general.
Yeah, that's a fair way to frame
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because you're giving them money so they can get on their own feet, and they can also be productive. They can also have some autonomy. They can create some space. I mean, I was in the Philippines with my family, and we gave money to a woman who didn't have a house, so she can build her own house. It was a blessing, and that freed up some breathing room. She was one of our house servants, maids. When you're in the third world country, you can live like a king pretty much, and it goes far. So it literally cost us, like, I don't know, like $300 American dollars. And that was enough for her to build her house to get some breathing room, so she can actually continue on doing other things. That was more viewed as an investment. We're investing into her so that she can therefore pick herself up.
Yeah, but there's no systems also that connect people who need investment with not. I mean, I think that there's probably a ton of incredibly talented engineers and artists in many different fields, incredible talent, incredible work ethic, who can't actually work on the field they want to work on because they have to spend all their time keeping a roof over their head and getting food. And like those people, you'd think, well, you could surely connect those people with like really rich people, and those people could invest in them and they would do well. But nobody's at all interested in that, because the mindset is that, well, in capitalistic America, that process of having to work, a 9-to-5 job to stay alive is good for the engineer, the artist, the innovator, because it motivates them. I mean, I don't think this is true. But I mean, again, it's the reason why nobody helps anybody, really. I mean, people do, like really good people do, but it's not something that's mainstream.
It's funny you bring that up. I just finished the free market course by David Henderson, and he talks about the importance of immigration for free markets to work. And he talks about when you start having really, this is one of the schools, I think it's the Chicago School of Free Market Economics. When you start having really stringent immigration laws, your innovation actually goes down. And he talks about the guy who invented Zoom was a Chinese guy, was not yet an American citizen, but had his green card and was like applying his ninth. He had to apply 9 times before he could finally get his citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
But he talks a lot about the importance of immigration, like good immigration. And if you want to, the best way to invest in other people often is just say, open the doors and let them come here, like legally, obviously, but bring your good ideas here. I think for the rich person that would give them, like, if Americans wealthy, they don't know. The problem with giving monies overseas is, okay, I don't know where it's actually going, if it's going to get siphoned off by a corrupt government who's going to take all their money through taxes. Come over here and I'll invest in you, and you can work in my company where the taxes are a lot lesser, and thrive and bring your great ideas.
Y'all just opened like 500 cans of worms in the last
Yeah.
5 minutes.
I know. Talk about immigration. That's a huge can of worms. Yeah.
Well, Scott, like, what is your focus here? Are we tangential, or what's the direction that you're interested in this topic?
Man, so many. A lot of things that you said and a lot of things that he said. And I can't remember every single one.
So we're still kind of on track. Okay, just make sure. I mean, it's
Yeah. Well, I think we're trying to extract the essence of these through there's communism for the village, socialism for the nation, and capitalism for progress. And I think we're talking about test cases here. I brought up the whole immigration thing about progress and innovation because quite often people don't, maybe people don't want other people coming into your country because they want to keep it safe. Maybe that's almost like a socialist, from your model
There's
about protecting the nation,
there's a
impulse to
lot.
keep it away.
There's a
But you
lot.
need the immigrant to bring progress sometimes because your nation has ossified and kind of been drained of good ideas. So
I can see that. I'm thinking about the earlier topic whenever you were talking about you don't just give money to people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a wisdom, I think, because like y'all were saying, some people didn't learn how to responsibly handle it. And so that's one reason why you don't just give people money that have never had money. And I can understand trying to, I think I heard maybe evaluate their psychological state and social stat. And maybe I misheard, but that sounds extremely that sounds like you need more systems to make sure that someone's even worth getting money, and using psychology to determine that, which sounds like a big red flag. And then the claim that immigrants help us with progress, I think I largely agree with. Man, y'all opened like 15 cans of worms, and I can't even remember, dude. Yeah, I like the so yeah, you have immigration, and that policy changes a lot, and I think the socialism lens in this idea fits whenever you bring up immigration, because whenever you do open the doors to anything and everything, then you do tax your citizens and provide these people with a welfare system then. And I don't know how it works legally. I've only been hearing more about how it works with illegal
Yeah.
immigration. I'm sure if you're legally immigrating, you probably have a better standing whenever you enter the country.
Yeah, yeah, no, you definitely, if you're illegal, you're not gonna get deported if you or get into trouble. I know for myself, my family has sponsored my Filipino family. There's about 6 of them. We got here to America, and they're renting from us one of our properties. And it's good to have them here, and they're hard workers. But it's not like, I don't know. Kind of to Josh was saying about the whole struggling thing. I don't. Is it part of the American dream to have to struggle from the ground up? Because I'm doing my family's doing our best to sponsor a Filipino family come to be here, but it's kind of been a sacrifice on our hands, and we can't really give them much more, and so it's kind of, you have to work, and they are working like 2-3 jobs to stay afloat because they're working from the bottom up. Who knows where they'll be in 5-10 years? Maybe they'll just thrive and start a business somewhere. But is that a good indicator of one's psychological state? I don't know if you can analyze it like a
Usually wealth is a good metric.
good
If you
metric.
can
But what's that,
accumulate wealth, you're probably pretty stable.
yeah, if you can, even if you're at the bottom, if you can work your way up, that's a good indicator that this person is worthy investing into.
Yeah, I mean, I would go like even further to the root that someone who can repair and learn from their mistakes, probably.
Yeah. Also willing to change. I don't know, fleeing a country, like, or getting the heck out of a bad country. And this is a whole nother immigration debate on asylum and whatnot. That's a huge sacrifice. Like, that's scary. But if I could see that someone is willing to leave their country for a better opportunity, I kind of know that,
Yeah.
at least that's one indicator to me that, man, they've got some courage.
Yeah.
They've got some grit.
Yeah, to pack everything up and leave what you know and go to something completely different. Yeah, it's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's horrifying, but that is an indicator that they actually might be good for your economy, perhaps. So
Yeah. And then, man, there was one other thing. Like why rich people don't share. But yeah, when I hear that, I think, well, aren't they already sharing? How do you accumulate that much wealth if you're not interconnected with maybe employees or interconnected with investments?
See, I think that's the assumption. I think we got clear about wealthy people is they're wealthy not because they're hoarding it all. It's typically because they're reinvesting their capital into other businesses and creating more jobs, and that is a way of sharing. That is sharing. You're not just when you do that, you're not just giving money away. You're actually giving people opportunity to work to provide a living.
I think the fair critique there is if they're using, like, in my personal life, we use like a place that invests for us, and you just tell them be aggressive or be conservative, and like they take the wheel. And so I don't know exactly how wealthy people manage their investments. Maybe that's something that they do as well. But I think a critique there is they are sharing, like you're saying, but they're not, picking exactly what. They're not going and saying, well, this protects the environment, I'll invest there. Well, this helps this section of poor people, I'll invest there. Right? They're not seeing it at that level. It's more of like, I'm going to invest in gold because it's going to make me do this.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I'm not a financial person, but I know that the systems that I use, I'm just like, here's the money, go figure it out.
I think about like an example. So the one thing you're talking about is like, is it maybe the American dream to actually start from the bottom and work up and you sort of build this whole thing? But I mean, I think that you can do that on different levels of actualization on the, hierarchy of needs. You can work from the ground up at the level of survival. But I mean, if you have people have just more money going into it, they could be working up from the level of innovation, industry, creative. They can do the same thing because your value still is on how much work you do, and you need that to get social credit. You need social credit to survive and attract a mate and go into the next generation and be in society. There's many motivating factors that are not purely survival. And then when it comes to rich people with money, I mean, if I just look at it like this, so like, maybe the people who own Walmart are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's like, well, why would you need hundreds of billions of dollars? Like as a human, what are you going to do with the, why, if you
Support
started
the
out the
business.
system, say what?
To support that business, that
Yeah,
enterprise.
reinvestment.
That's
Personal
like
money.
I don't know what their personal bank account is, but I think that's I think you might be talking about their value.
No,
Like
but
Elon
like,
Musk is valued at $1 trillion, but maybe that's not like that would be if he liquefied all of his assets, I guess.
Please don't liquefy your assets, Elon Musk.
okay, yeah, I mean, and maybe my numbers are wrong in that, but let's say somebody's personal value, the money they actually have is like billions of dollars.
Okay.
And but what I'm thinking is like this: when it comes to like the thing like a store, right? A store is this system. If you think about like a store that's like the only store, like Walmart, right? Like or Amazon, and it's a system to connect people with goods. And at some point, I mean, it's like so somebody was great for innovating and building it, but like how is it helpful? Like what's the point in one person getting all the money for it? Like wouldn't it be better if like the system was working for the people?
That's a good
Ooh.
question because I think it is working for the people, and that's part of the capitalistic system is that they are appealing to their target audience and they're out competing whoever else is around them that can't keep up. And so that's why they have so much money is because people keep going there and spending money. If you don't want someone to be successful, stop giving them money. If we don't want Elon to be rich, find out what he, gets money from and then everybody just cut him off.
Yeah.
Nobody does that now.
No, because they're offering a good that makes your life that actually benefits your life. I mean, I'm grateful for Walmart. My wife and I, have a baby. It's been rough. Man, this whole new Walmart Plus thing and delivery. Oh man, that's been a lifesaver for us. Holy my goodness. We live out in a rural area and they bring us Walmart goods. And I'm like, oh thank you.
That's cool.
Huge because that has freed up my time. I don't have to go into town when my wife is super with the baby and everything. I can actually focus on my work and make money and not have to. It's such a low cost for me. I can keep making more money while the Walmart people bring the groceries, and I don't have to go into the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it looks like these systems have like a bloat, but that's like maybe the Walmart CEO unnecessarily has like you can look at actors that are on yachts and things like that, and I think that's a fair critique. But I mean, I don't know what else to say. They did their job and they can do whatever they want with their money unless we just want to be the people that go and snatch money from people.
And I think, well, here's the thing to look at it, Scott. I mean, they're on their yacht, right? But how much good did they actually give the world through the invention of Amazon? What, and you can't just think about in dollars. Think about opportunity costs. Like for me, my opportunity cost, the cost, what I had to give, what I would have to give up to go grocery shopping. That's kind of a big cost for me because I wouldn't be talking to you right now because
Well,
I'd have to be dealing with the groceries.
go back to a different layer. Like, what would I have to do if I had to grow my own crops? What
Oh
would I
yeah,
have
yeah,
to do?
exactly. And so it's that supply chain just opens up possibility for which I don't think we're always aware of. We look at dollar signs and how much is their net income, but we don't realize the opportunities that have been afforded to us because of their innovation. And if you take that away, because if you take that incentive away to innovate, you're not going to get better Amazons. You're not gonna we wouldn't have Amazon or WebEx, Zoom meetings, all
There's
the good things.
there's gotta be there's gotta be a point though, right? Like when someone does just have like way too much, like that's logically that's logically possible.
Okay, I agree with you. I think there is a point, and I think there's a point when that person starts behaving like a spoiled tyrannical king. I don't see Elon Musk. I mean, he has a yacht, but he's still shooting rockets into Mars.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah,
so
you
it's
can
like,
balance
okay,
it out.
there was this cool thing I read. It was a critique on when we sent the first rocket to Mars. This is a book by Ayn Rand. She was talking about this, how they were so proud that NASA sent the rover to Mars. I believe it's rover, the first rover. Forgot what it's called, Sputnik. No, that was the Russian one. But they sent that they sent the rocket, and then what did they all rally to do after they actually had a successful mission? Take money away from NASA. They did their job. Give it to someone else. And like that's kind of, and her critique was that's so demoralizing because you just decentivized greatness.
Yeah. You just have
Yeah.
different priorities, and that's part of the balance in this
Mm-hmm.
the nation stability thing. Like, I don't know why. Maybe the information's out there, but maybe they took those funds because we needed those funds, and that's just how it is. That's just like the socialistic layer of society.
Yeah.
But now that
That's
we
good.
have space travel, now that we have space travel in the like capitalistic private frame, I mean, yeah, it's a completely different story.
Well, what do you think, Scott? Did we kind of answer your question on where is the dividing line between these, where the communist ideology, the socialist ideology, and the capitalist ideology best have their place?
Yeah, I think so. I was mainly trying to see if y'all guys were kind of in alignment with it and if y'all had some additional thoughts. And it seems like y'all guys are kind of on the same page. Like, communal logic belongs small scale family, maybe small village. Socialism kind of the logic, not the economic system. Like, that thing belongs kind of to make sure that, we have roads, we have utilities, we keep people who can't perform in society, fed and medicated. And then we have capitalism so that we can progress. Seems like y'all largely agree with that concept.
Yeah, and then would it be safe to say that when we contention happens and problems happen when we blur those lines, we don't scale it properly. Uh, um, when we want to be hyper compassionate to someone that maybe we shouldn't be hyper compassionate. C.S. Lewis in the Screw Tape Letters talks about, if you ever read Screw Tape Letters, it's the perspective of these demons trying to tempt this British man away from Christ. And he talks about one of the tactics they use is get this man rallied up about helping someone overseas, helping some cause, like caring for the people in Ukraine or something, caring for them, and make sure he puts all his compassionate energy towards them, but so that he can neglect caring for his own mother, who lives down the road from him. And so he took this perhaps this good logic of communism that ought to be scaled in the family unit, and then took that and siphoned off away overseas, where and then that creates a problem, and that kind of thwarted it. And then you start treating your family members as if they're cutthroat business partners that you're competing with, or cutthroat competition, and that's not good either.
Yeah. So it almost,
Yeah.
I'm just more convinced that it needs a
Yeah.
balance of the things.
Are we off balance then on that, in regards to the socialist logic, the socialism logic? I kind of fear that we don't have that enough in America. I think one of the downfalls with the internet is we see too much in the lives of other people, and you might say that communism impulse gets compelled to go to some foreigner or some influencer on the internet, when we ought to be attending more to our families. But the socialist principle, I think where the socialist logic works best is in your local jurisdictions, in your local politics, where you're actually voting and arguing about allocating resources to build a road or build a new school. How much civic involvement does the average American person have in their local community? Or are they more rallied up about Donald Trump being the president or Joe Biden? They know more about federal politics than they do about their own county politics.
Yeah, I mean, to Josh's point with using technology to, to our benefit, there's a lot of controversial suggestions we could make to help us in that.
Yeah.
Like being able to vote via social media, being able to vote with your phone, or maybe even somehow, I don't know why, but it doesn't seem like there's too much motivation for journalism to go and talk about these things. Like in my lifetime, I've heard more about the presidency, and maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. I don't get it, but like Congress and the House of Representatives aren't things to be. They're not like as mimetically strong or whatever. They're
Yeah.
not just everywhere. Like we're not talking about these people
Well,
constantly.
you know the positions your House representative took on the last round of legislation. Do you
Yeah.
have any idea?
Yeah, and I want to know why that I'm that way. I want to know why I wasn't and haven't been. I don't vote.
No, see, that's
I
like
don't.
locally or like.
I don't vote at all. I don't like doing political things.
Yeah, no, I don't either. But I was talking to Gerald about this, and I remember Jordan Peterson mentioning this vaguely in a past podcast about um why are there transsexual activists in the education system? How did they even get there to begin with? And one of the arguments was because parents who didn't want to pick up the mantle of responsibility, thought someone else would do it. They just kind of chose to abdicate it, whether that be out of life, because it's hard to be a young father. You're providing for your family. That can be difficult, but also because of you just want to appease and want to keep the peace. You don't want to step into civic service. The thing is, if you don't pick up that mantle, if narcissists they swarm it like bees on honey. They love that stuff. And so if good people don't pick up civic responsibility, the snakes and the monsters will siphon it off and they'll take the reins. Um, and so I think the more responsibility, the local responsibility you abdicate, this is what Gerald and I talked about last time. The more you abdicate, the more a higher entity, like a higher jurisdiction, will take over the problem. So if there's a problem in your society and no one wants to fix the problem in your community, you get the state to do it, and if the state doesn't want to do it, then you get the federal, and then what happens? Well, they just amass power over your
Try
life.
try to I would challenge you to try to say what you just said without any moral language.
Moral language. Okay, so any responsibility.
I mean, like, say I specifically heard if you don't participate, then snakes come in and take the torch.
Okay, that's language. Okay, if you don't participate or you don't solve the problems in your sphere of influence, in your realm of responsibility, in your local jurisdiction, other people who are power hungry, who like the allure of power and influence, they're going to step in, and they might
So
not have
wait,
the same agenda that you. They may not have your interest in mind.
so does that mean I'm not power hungry?
No, you're not power hungry. No, but maybe you ought. Well, maybe not be. But because you're not power hungry, someone else who is will take your place if whatever you choose not to do.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am constantly looking into why I don't participate.
Oh, can I share a quote with you real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I like this. This fits into what we're discussing. Let me pull it up here.
Do you have any thoughts, Josh? You're muted, sorry.
How's my video quality look? Because your guys, like, my internet's so bad that it's just like your guys' quality is Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
My quality's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let Khaden go. Maybe I'll say something.
So I use the word snakes and monsters, but I'm going to replace that with the word brute on this quote here. Talks about abdicating responsibility. I'll share it. I read it from The Voice of Reason by Ayn Rand, and she says this: hatred for reason is hatred for intelligence. Today's culture is saturated with both. It is the ultimate product of generations of appeasers, past, present, and men, fearing an imaginary brute upheld by and perpetuated by the irrational, inhuman, brutalizing morality of altruism. Okay, no. She says, no, men are not brutes. Neither are they all independent thinkers. The majority of men are not intellectual initiators or originators. They accept what the culture offers them. It's not that they do not think, it's that they don't sustain their thinking consistently as a way of life, and that their abstract range is limited. To what extent they are stunted by the anti-rational influences of our cultural traditions is hard to say. What is known, however, is that the majority of men use only a small part of their potential intellectual capacity. So I'm going to use that word intellectual capacity and range of thinking to sustain the amount of thinking required to actually solve the problems in your life. Just kind of caveat that there with your quote. The truly deliberate evil men are a very small minority. It is the appeasers who unleash them on mankind. It is the appeasers' intellectual abdication that invites them to take over. When a culture's dominant trend is geared to irrationality, the thugs win over the appeasers. When the intellectual leaders fail to foster the best in the mixed, unformed, vacillating character of people at large, the thugs are sure to bring out the worst. When the ablest men turn into cowards, the average men turn into brutes. No, the average man is not morally innocent, but the best proof of his non-brutality, of his helplessness, confused, inarticulate longing for truth, for an unintelligible, rational world, and of his response to it, when given the chance he cannot create his own, is the fact that no dictatorship has ever lasted without establishing censorship. Sorry, I wrote a lot there, but what I really wanted to focus on was this idea of appeasing. When those with the intellect, those that can see the problems, when they abdicate such responsibility, that's when the thugs come in, or the bad actors, or maybe even the irrational or the incompetent take the reins of office in and that wreaks havoc. So
To what you were saying before, Scott, where you're like, I don't know why I don't personally vote. I know why I don't care about voting or politics that much, and it's because I feel like conversations, communication, one-on-one or small group communication like we're having right now is more impactful than my vote. And because I think that the mimetic transfer and exploration of possibilities and ideas is more expansive than voting within the current constraints of the system. Like I think about like talking about these ideas of, the internet in politics or different ways that we can think about and individually have responsibility. These feel more productive than voting. That's my personal. I could be wrong. That's why I don't care about it that much.
well,
Like,
I'll
at
push
least
you on
with
that a little bit, Josh. Are you talking about like voting on your federal level, or are you talking about voting like just locally in your town politics, in your city politics?
Both.
Okay. I mean, because Dan, the who taught the unconventional ethics for civics at Peterson Academy, he talks about how he won by a margin of 155 votes for House Representative his first time, and I think that's interesting because that was such a narrow margin, and it's like what difference is he going to make in Congress? I don't know. He now sits on the CIA. He oversees the intelligence operation. That's a pretty high thing of power. And so I would say that your vote, your vote probably won't make a difference on the federal level, but your vote on a local level and your ability to talk to people locally, to get the people in office who are actually competent and not narcissistic, not egoistic, or or incompetent. Your ability to talk to people locally, you can swing votes in your local place, and that could shift the tide. That could just inch it enough in a certain inch the nation enough in a certain direction, but at least your local jurisdiction. Because the tax laws in your area, those do affect you, and at least where I'm at in Idaho, we can vote on certain things, and that actually we do feel the crunch. And so it does help. And talking, and then like I said, I talk to my neighbors. We all talk about politics. It's good to have a rich dialogical community with your local neighbors about certain things, because that, well, heck, that can make a huge difference. So
I've never had one politician knock on my door throughout my entire life. Yeah, I don't
that's
know.
probably a good thing.
I mean, what does this zeitgeist expect people to do? It sounds like this idea is outdated.
What idea is outdated?
The idea of, well, you'd better go out and vote or you'll get ruled by morons. That is it Plato, or who is it that says that?
I don't know who says that.
It's
I know
not
that
that it's not that exactly, but
yeah.
it's basically that's the gist. Is if you don't participate in politics, you're going to get ruled by people you don't want to rule you.
I think collectively, if enough people think that way, yes. If enough people think that way, then it will be that way. But I think what I'm trying to think, the impact of your vote may be more relevant to, I don't know, your local school district, because that's what I'm thinking. That's the horizon I'm looking at for my daughter. I'm like, okay, what the world is she gonna? I actually might have an impact on education where I live.
Right. And so,
Hmm.
man, Dad just opened another can of worms that we can get into if you like.
Hmm.
But we don't have to. So let's see what happens. So we have these developmental stages in life.
Hmm.
And when we have children now, it's a bit later in life. And so when you have a child, maybe you start thinking about these things. What you just said, you know, I'm over 30 and now I'm starting to think about these political things.
Hmm.
Why didn't I start thinking about these things in my early 20s? And then I go to, well, is the trans activist thing that you're talking about, is that a symptom of me being in this limbo, and maybe many people just like me in my generation being in this limbo, not participating in politics because we extended development? I mean, this is for like another claim, another proposal, another time. But yeah, I can't help but think about that kind of stuff.
I know. I heard the 30s is the new 20s or something now.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. No, I know. I actually agree. Like, no, I'm with you there, Scott. I've been thinking a lot more about politics. I'm actually really grateful for Peterson Academy for giving me an education at this prime time of life. I wasn't thinking about politics in my 20s, but now I'm caring for my daughter. Oh,
Yeah.
it's an important thing. I want to make sure she's going to grow up in a world that's going to she can actually thrive in. So,
Yeah, that's definitely another massive topic we could get into.
yeah.
Why is it that we're extending social developmental stages, and why is it now that we're concerned about this? And if I'm one data point, how many more data points are there? So
Yeah.
complicated.
That's probably a good place to stop on. We can actually let's save that for a future proposal, because I do have some ideas of why we're delaying development. Are all Peter Pan boys, Peter Pan men.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Nothing
No,
against like 20-year-olds, but yeah.
no, the things you could tell your 20-year-old self, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll hit to stop on the recording. Thank you. All right.